Jesus Christ revealed to Joseph Smith in April of 1835 that there are two divisions or orders of priesthood in the church, Melchizedek and Levitical. Later in that same revelation, the Lord revealed a third order of priesthood. This priesthood is patriarchal, being handed down from father to son within the chosen seed. Joseph Smith mentioned this priesthood to the saints in October of 1843. He only mentioned it in passing, since the Nauvoo temple had not been completed at the time. The knowledge of this priesthood would come available to the members when the temple would be finished. Though Joseph Smith was reticent to publicly speak of the order of patriarchal priesthood in 1843, the order had been established a decade earlier. In April of 1835, the Lord instructed the 12 to ordain evangelical ministers in the branches outside the stakes of Zion. Since these ministers were to be members of the chosen seed, they needed to be designated by revelation. Only the Lord would know who belonged to the chosen seed and who did not. Joseph Smith explained to the saints in 1839 that an evangelical minister or evangelist is a patriarch. He is the oldest man of the blood of Joseph, or of the seed of Abraham. There is to be a patriarch wherever the Church of Christ is established on earth. The patriarch is to give blessings to the saints. Joseph cited the example of Jacob giving patriarchal blessings to his sons. These blessings are recorded in the 49th chapter of Genesis. Jacob gave a blessing, a prophecy, to each of his sons in turn. In the same revelation that the Lord introduced the evangelical or patriarchal priesthood, he gave its genealogy. The genealogical line of authority is fundamental to any lineal priesthood. As Jacob had done for his sons, so Adam blessed his patriarchal lineage before his death. Prophecy is inherent in the patriarchal priesthood and its blessings. Adam, as presiding patriarch, used this authority to predict what would befall his posterity unto the end of the world. In our day, the patriarchal priesthood was re-established. Joseph Smith ordained his father, Joseph Smith Sr., to be the presiding patriarch. Joseph Sr. held the right to the patriarchal priesthood through lineage. He was promised that he would assemble his posterity as did Adam. As the presiding patriarch, Joseph Sr. held the keys of this priesthood in the church, under the direction of Adam, the Ancient of Days. Abraham sought the patriarchal priesthood, which was his right as a firstborn of the chosen lineage, the fathers. As a patriarch, Abraham became the heir to the records of the patriarchs concerning the right of priesthood. It is from these records we know of the creation and the planets and stars. These records of the fathers and of Abraham were carefully preserved by the Lord and restored to the rightful heirs of the fathers, the Joseph Smith family. These records were preserved on Egyptian papyri found with mummies. As Abraham indicated, these records contained an account of the formation of our planetary system, to which Abraham added his knowledge of the history of the planets. Record-keeping is an inherent part of the duties of the patriarchal priesthood. After Joseph's death, the papyri were sold and, except for a small portion, lost to the church. Due to their transcendent importance, the Lord has preserved the records and will restore them again in due time. Having received the patriarchal priesthood, Abraham received the promises and blessings we call the Abrahamic covenant. Joseph Smith was given a blessing similar to that of Abraham. The blessing included a land inheritance of a type. But it was Joseph's father and subsequently his brother Hyrum who were given the patriarchal priesthood. Hyrum was the second born of Joseph Smith Sr., but due to the early death of Alvin, the firstborn, Hyrum became the eldest son in the Smith family. In a January 1841 revelation, the Lord gave Joseph the slate of general officers to be approved at conference. Hyrum was nominated as the presiding officer of the church. When the Lord designated Hyrum Smith as the presiding patriarch of the church, he listed him as the first and, therefore, the ranking officer of the church. Hyrum's nomination preceded that of Joseph and the First Presidency and Brigham Young and the Quorum of 12 Apostles. This order was neither accidental nor a mistake. Joseph Smith informed the saints in May of 1843 that the office of patriarch is the highest in the church, above that of president or the head of the 12. Joseph Smith Sr., who first held the office, conferred it upon Hyrum on his deathbed in 1840. Hyrum himself acknowledged his preeminent position in the church. He signed a notice in the Times and Seasons dated June 1st of 1844, or less than a month before his death, as Hyrum Smith, President of the Church. Brigham Young acknowledged after the Carthage martyrdom that Joseph had ordained Hyrum to take his place in the event that Joseph died. Of course, the idea of a preeminent lineal priesthood muddled the issue of succession. Shortly after the martyrdom, in July of 1844, Samuel Smith, younger brother to Joseph and Hyrum, claimed the right to the presidency of the church. He founded his claim based upon lineage and a direct statement by Joseph. Samuel followed his brothers in death about a month later. Some believe he was murdered, a casualty of the succession crisis. The office of patriarch to the church, or presiding patriarch, continued until 1979. After more than 40 years of service as church patriarch, Eldred G. Smith was relieved, not released, of his duties as patriarch. The reason given for his being relieved was the increase of stake patriarchs in the church. In the October 1979 General Conference, President N. Eldon Tanner extended the release at the direction of President Spencer W. Kimball.
Before presenting the authorities for the vote of the conference, President Kimball has asked me to read the following statement. Because of the large increase in the number of state patriarchs and the availability of patriarchal service throughout the world, we now designate Eldred G. Smith as a patriarch emeritus, which means that he is honorably relieved, not released, of all duties and responsibilities pertaining to the office of patriarch to the church.
Elder Smith served as patriarch emeritus until his death 30 years later. There has been no successor named to serve as patriarch of the church. The church has never explained how the First Presidency had the authority to release a more senior priesthood officer in the church. Nor has it explained why a new patriarch was never called when the line of patrilineal succession continued. On the 4th of May, 1842, Joseph met with prominent and trusted leaders of the church on the upper floor of the red brick store in Nauvoo. This was an important event, for Joseph first introduced the series of ordinances we now call the endowment. Joseph's record of the event, later incorporated in the history of the Church, relates that he taught the brethren of the principles and order of the priesthood and the communication of keys from the Aaronic priesthood to the highest order of the Melchizedek priesthood, which is the order pertaining to Adam, the Ancient of Days. In other words, the patriarchal priesthood is the highest order of priesthood, exceeding all other orders. Joseph then explained that it is patriarchal priesthood, the ancient order of things, which enables the securing of the fullness of blessings, including abiding in the presence of the Lord. Patriarchal priesthood is the highest order of the Melchizedek priesthood and the fullness of the priesthood. It is fundamentally tied to marriage and having seed. After all, there can be no patriarchs without fatherhood and motherhood. Accordingly, the foundation for obtaining the highest degree of the celestial kingdom is the new and everlasting covenant of marriage. It is important to reiterate that the new and everlasting covenant of marriage is an order of priesthood. It is only through this priesthood order that men and women, anointed by the man who has the keys, receive the fullness and the continuation of the seeds and inherit all power, priesthood power, thus becoming gods. One of the reasons man and woman become gods is the continuation of seeds. In other words, there can be no godhood without lineal priesthood. Patriarchal priesthood is fundamental to godhood. This principle is made explicit in the sealing of the couples in the temple. Husband and wife are given eternal lives, the power to procreate, and commanded to be fruitful and multiply. They are given the blessings of the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Having done a preliminary review of lineal priesthood, we can formulate the following two general principles. First, certain lineages bestow legal titles to exercise specific priesthood authorities and power. Those who receive these rights are considered lawful heirs. Though the title is received by birthright, generally speaking, these rights must be ritually confirmed. The highest order of priesthood is patriarchal and is attained through the new and everlasting covenant of marriage. This order of lineal priesthood gives the continuation of seeds and constitutes godhood. Of course, there is much more to the topic of lineal priesthood. For example, as we've noted previously, implicit in the rights of the priesthood passing through a designated lineage is the fact that all other lineages are restricted from obtaining or exercising those rights. However, there are also general restrictions to priesthood authority. Certain lineages can be cursed. That is, these lineages cannot hold or exercise priesthood. And one of those cursed lineages was that of the Canaanites. We learn from the book of Abraham that the first Pharaoh of Egypt and all Egyptians were Canaanites, by blood, and therefore could not have the right of priesthood. Pharaoh did, however, try to claim priesthood and imitated the patriarchal order after the government of Ham. The Old Testament records the curse where Noah, the patriarch of the time, cursed his grandson Canaan to be a servant of servants.